We have an AI system that reads a 400-page tender document, and if it is able to call out all the risky clauses in that document after about 2-3 hours of processing and reading, and it tells that person, look, even before you spend your time reading all the 400 pages, here is a summary of the clauses that you have to watch out for. That's helpful.
Very nice. Okay, thank you for that example. Dhananjay, your thoughts on the topic?
Or your legal guys would be thanking you for that. You know? Yeah. So you see, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, anything that adds value will find adoption. Very simple. Now, adding value to whom? A, adding value to the customer, or adding value to my own staff members, right? Let's look at adding value to the customer. If it is something that is going to make life easier for him, he is going to adopt it without any difficulty whatsoever. So this digital lending that I was talking to you about, we made it available to the customers through our flagship application called Yono. You only need one.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-minute process. Now, you will be able to take a loan 365 days in a year, 24/7, in just 2 minutes if you are eligible for it. Great value addition to the customer. So therefore, as far as the customers are concerned, they have adopted it very, very seamlessly and without any difficulty. Now look at from the staff perspective. And let's take the example of cross-selling. See, earlier what would happen is we would give the staff members a list which was extracted on the basis of certain rules saying, these are the customers, approach them for, let's say, selling life insurance or selling mutual funds or selling credit cards. And then they would find that most of them actually didn't want that product. Now, instead of that, we are curating those lists far, far better. So instead of giving staff members a list of 1,000 customers saying, contact these 1,000 customers and sell them life insurance, we just give them 50 customers saying, these are the guys who have the highest propensity to take a life insurance, sell them. Now you see what have we done? We have reduced the work for the staff and they feel happier, because now their success rates are much higher. Earlier they were calling up 1,000 people and only 20 of them were ending up taking the product. Now they are calling 50 people and 40 out of those are ending up taking the product. So their success rates are much better. Their burden has come down. Their motivation levels have gone up. And the business for the bank has also gone up. Thank you everyone in the room for that.
Let me just pause a second and then maybe ask the room for questions based on what we have talked so far, because we'll take it to the next point afterwards. I would love to hear if people have thoughts based on what we have ideas we've thrown out so far. Yeah. Do we have mics to be taken around, folks? Yeah, just bring it over here. You could quickly introduce yourself and
Hi, my name is Saurabh. Work for ANZ, that's a bank, and I'm very interested to hear BFSI discussions here. Now, after working on AI for quite some time, what we have realized that there's few things we need to do, and which I would like to hear from you guys is about the AI policy, AI roadmap, and AI strategy, which I'm struggling. Why? Because everybody wants to do AI ML in this world now. Now, unfortunately, what happens is that it is pockets of AI is evolving everywhere. Now, how do we control it? I think after few years of journey, as they all said, talk about the value, we have moved away from POC to POV. We call it as a proof of value. Now, that's how you actually bring the value out of it. Now, most important part is that how in your journey you have seen that we can bring those policies and roadmap and strategies to bring together so that as an organization we go in the right direction, because we still don't know what is there after 2 years, because AI is developing, evolving every day. I'm struggling, so I'm curious to know that how as you leaders are thinking about it.
thanks a lot. Yeah, please go ahead.
I missed his name, sorry. Saurabh. Thanks, Saurabh. I think most of us are struggling with exactly what you said. And I can share my insights and how we are approaching it and what's the way forward. Like I said earlier, be very, very use case specific, use case focused. The world is large. The opportunity to increase revenue is much more than the opportunity to reduce cost for any of us. Let's say market share less than 4%, 5%, less than 10%. How much cost can you save? So if you focus on the revenue building capabilities for business, you will be forced by the market around you to deliver a process which is cost efficient as well. If you combine these two intents, you will find your way. Like you said, banking, and we trust our customers for lending, for insurance products, and host of stuff. The two, three technologies which will play a role in this entire space more dominantly than others. Well, all of us talk about data analytics, data lakes, past propensities versus future behavior of customer and so on. 5G technology, video streaming, these two will define the future processes. They'll make processes much more convenient for all of us, internally and externally both. Facial recognition technology will transform the way we live from 5 years from now. There are some use cases that are already coming up. Yeah, China is thriving on facial technology. It's a matter of time. I think many of us are doing those POCs and POVs right now. It will succeed. I've seen some very successful POCs now recently. Like China has currently 200 million CCTV cameras. They will have about 600 million in 5 years from now, which means almost one camera for every 2 citizens. Things will happen on technology. Micro expressions based technologies will dominate. A company called Lemonade in the US, they give insurance based on your interview on a video. They read your face, read the intent, and micro expression technology tells you you're lying or not, whether you will keep up your promise or not, based on historical expressions data. And people are lending. They're honoring insurance claims in 6 seconds after the video is complete, based on these technologies. So very heavily using these technologies, using 5G and video streaming speeds going forward, I think most of us will transact with our banks in that way in the years to come. You will focus on these 3, 4 dimensions, you will find value.
Thanks. I see there's some questions coming there as well, but before I get there, anybody else? Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little challenged, but maybe you can
Hi.
go first and then.
Hi, I'm Joseph from the British High Commission. We started the conversation establishing a fact that AI is very old, and to substantiate that particular fact, we know the Alan Turing Institute. We've known the AI lab in Edinburgh University as well. My question is, why has it taken this long for companies to work with universities? Is there a current marriage with the universities? If there is, how can it be a better marriage with the universities?
Okay. Anybody wants to share thoughts on that? University
well,
collaborations?
Yeah, sure. So at Tata Technologies, well, all of us, right, we face this issue of these new GETs or PGTs coming into our workforce, and then we have to spend about 18 months training them, right? So to make them more efficient and let them, hit the road running, what we are doing is we are partnering with the universities and actually embedding ourselves in the courseware, right? We are, especially engineering courseware. So we are actually replacing the traditional courses with some things that the industry actually needs, right? So in our case, it's engineering and manufacturing. And clearly, any technologies that touch these two major pieces of our I guess, value proposition, it becomes an element of the courseware, right? So we call it Ready Engineer. And we have also, for example, with a couple of universities in India, one is, we started something with Amity about 4 years ago, where the degree course, right, the BTech and the MTech courses are essentially, in the first year, we impart about 10-15% of the education. In the second year, it goes to about 40%. In the third year, it goes as high as 60%, right, of the education. And so we are actually making sure that when these engineers come out, they're going to be that much more, immediately employable, right? one of the biggest issues, and I think there were some studies in India done where the number of engineers coming out are not easily employable, right? So we are trying to address that. Now, once we try to do that in terms of engagement with the education industry, we are then trying to figure out how can we enable them to do better by setting up these labs, whether they are AI labs or high-tech labs, with AR, VR, and all the engineering tool sets that we bring in, and we are putting in those labs so that these students can then start using them, right? And coming out with solutions that we've been yearning for many years, right? The thing is, once you give the student community and the educators these kind of labs and these kind of tool sets, the collaboration then starts, right? They can start researching things that we've been saying are problem statements for us, and then once they solve those problems, we can bring it into the industry.
I'll just add a couple of points to that thought, right? One is, I think, when I was making the comment earlier about AI being old, for the longest time, most of the work in AI from an algorithmic perspective has been in the academia, in the research world. And of course, in some of the research labs, like the earlier AT&T, Bell Labs, and some of those places, like Jan LeCun, et cetera, coming from that lineage. But I think with the explosion of data, where the movement in AI has been data-led, the work has moved more towards the business world. But what you see today is both in the globally, China particularly, US, India as well, is that there is need for stronger collaboration, because just driving with data is taking the research, or at least the degree of knowledge only so far. So there is two schools of thought, how much only data can drive research in AI. I think your point was coming from both research as well as education. Thanks. We've got two questions, but I want to just go to the Mukesh. I think there's this very specific question for you. What are your views on AI stream reporting to legacy tech leadership of the firm?
It's a challenge. It's more of a challenge than my view is not so important here, because organizations will take their views on this. But yeah, most of the AI professionals are young. It's the last few years kind of phenomenon happening. So most of the talent in digital world is pretty young. While most conventional and large organizations will have hierarchies, you will end up reporting into someone who's more traditional leader than AI-led kind of leader. So this challenge will be there. But with time, as you push the leadership out from those positions in a few years from now, you'll find leaders who talk your language. That's what I would say. But for the time being, bear with it. In born digital organizations, this may be less of a challenge. Many of these organizations are led by IT professionals. But yeah, it's a challenge. Making your boss understand what am I trying to do through AI sometimes is a problem, definitely.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll take a couple of questions here.
So my name is Rahul Godke. I'm from a company called CGI. The question is, we also experiment quite a lot on AI, machine learning, and the newest digital technologies. The challenge that we face is while the POE is built on a certain hypothesis where the precision level of X needs to be met, before which we are okay to be pushed. We are okay to push the product or the service into production. The challenge that we have seen is, with the nature of these technologies, we are never close to the precision level of what we define at the time of hypothesis. Now, what is the risk as leaders that you have taken when you have not met the POE precision level and are eager to push these products into production? Because there is an element of risk, and I can tell you with my experience, and I'm a researcher myself, that if you benchmark a 90% plus a precision level, you will never get these in these technologies. And I can boldly tell you because I am a hands-on person on this. So I want to understand what risk that you take as leaders to experiment these into production, and what precaution that you take to make sure that we protect ourselves from a brand perspective, because keep in mind that the brand aspect is also important. And second, how do we actually recoup the technology exposures, if there are any, in the early stage of the production?
Would you like to take this question?
So you see, as far as we are concerned, I'm a bank, right? So as far as we are concerned, the greatest risk is on the lending side, right? Now, on day one, you can never be sure that whatever algorithm you have developed is going to result in something, which is going to give you a 100% foolproof kind of a credit-worthy list of customers. That will not happen on day one. It will have to be an iterative process. So what do you do? How do you ring fence yourself? So one thing that you can do is, and that's what we have done, is we have set a cap to the amount that we shall lend through this process. So in wave one, we will say that we will lend up to X crore rupees using this methodology, right? Now take the results, because for us to be able to see the results is going to take at least 6 months. Your EMIs will kick in only after 1 month of lending, and then your account will become NP only 90 days thereafter. So I'll come to know whether your account is becoming delinquent or not only after about 4 or 5 months. So that is when I come to know the results of what I have done. So what we do is, we keep a cap to it, and then basis that, once we get more, so I'll give you an example. We started something called e-Mudra. So Mudra, many of you might know, it's a lending to the MSME sector, the smaller value lending, right? So when we came out first, we had kept a limit of, let's say, X crore rupees. And we found that it wasn't, the methodology wasn't good. We refined it and we made that limit 10x, right? And we have found that, because we were then able to find that the results were actually much better than the earlier ones, and that is how we have increased. So as far as capping the risk is concerned, that is how we are capping the risk in the BFSI space. Of course, in the manufacturing space, they would have different ways of capping.
No, that's great. That's excellent. I'll just, one more question. If you want to move forward, please go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry, take a mic.
So when we spoke about digital lending, can you also speak about the responsibility part of it? Because, for example, it's very nice that your system is able to assess and tell you that these are the 50 guys that you can give loans to or give an insurance to. But what if the system is doing that assessment incorrectly? What if you're incorrectly, rejecting me of a loan? What is the responsibility part of it? How are you handling it? If you could please
So
share.
I'll use that to segue into the next leg of the conversation. So we did talk about, when I started up the conversation, I was talking about the fact that it's about strategy, culture, and responsibility. And we talked a little bit about strategy from the perspective of sponsorship and thinking about data in a holistic fashion, etc. And we talked about culture to some extent in terms of communication, etc. The part about responsibility is where I'm leading from your question, so thanks for the question. There is clearly the fear factor. Somebody talked about your fear factor. And then there is clearly an accountability factor in some respects. How are you thinking about those dimensions? Broadly, if I were to call them as responsibility or ethics issues or issues that one needs to think about, that's as a result of AI. And second is, we touched a little bit about employability. That becomes another issue people have. What about my job that I was doing earlier? Those are sticky issues, and I would love to hear the panel's thoughts on some of these topics. You want to say? Yeah.
Couple of answers to even a few questions somebody else had asked. When you're thinking about AI and strategy, it's not possible for us to say there's only one AI department, there's only one group of people in the company which will do AI. AI is pervasive. You will find that there's an opportunity for young people in different sectors and places of the business to use AI as an opportunity to make something better than what they are doing. So AI will happen at a lot of places. And when you move AI from it is attempting to do something to it completely doing it by itself without human intervention. So you can use AI in recruitment. You have to give the system a bunch of CVs and the system says, I'll pick the most suitable that you like. It's exactly like how you even pick lending. It has a set of rules. It learns from a set of things that have happened. It reads a contract document, finds out what is wrong. It looks at a set of data and says a machine will likely to be fail at some point of time. There's a whole bunch of things that you're doing. So there is a responsibility around the person who's driving this initiative to see at what point of time the system supplements human knowledge and endeavor, and at what point of time does it take over. The way we are at the world today, a lot of tasks which have predefined rules have gone into the automation route, where you have robotic process automation, you define a rule, and so without human intervention, you can do something. So the responsibility lies in saying that where you recognize that human cognition is required, and you put in interventions to supplement and use it at that point of stage. And I think the number of things that will pass that stage and get into automation will increase over a period of time. And one thing is to also build awareness amongst everybody in the company to really understand what AI is, and not to think of AI as a silver bullet that will solve everything. And you can do that only through very systematic, proper education that makes people understand the plus, minus, the features and the limitations of AI. And what you do today will not stand good 2 years down the line, because the whole capabilities of AI and what it does will keep changing.
Yeah, please.
So you see, there's something called fairness, ethics, accountability, and transparency. FEAT. This is a framework that we have, and this is a very, very important framework if you want to build an AI policy. Fairness, ethics, accountability, and transparency. Now the question that you raised, if there is somebody who is the machine going to now decide whom to lend and whom not to lend? Will somebody be denied a loan because the machine says you are not lendable? Big problem of ethics, because AI is a black box. You will hardly be able to tell, and especially for a regulated industry like me, I'll hardly be able to convince the regulator tomorrow as to why this person was denied a loan. Therefore, we don't do that. What we are saying is, we are not going to deny anyone loan basis an AI decision making. No. We are saying, if you are credit worthy basis the AI decision making, we will make your process smoother. So we will enable digital lending only to those people who fit into certain criteria. But that does not mean that the rest of the people will be denied. So if you fit into that criteria, you are eligible for an e-mudra. Otherwise, please, you are welcome to come to the branch and take the normal course of mudra. So nobody is denied basis an AI decision making. That is something which will just not happen, not in, at least in the near future.
I think,
Go ahead.
right, I think, the points that have been made are extremely relevant, right? The first thing is, everybody needs to understand that AI in and of itself will not really solve all problems. AI with the human is what will really deliver value, right? These two things have to go hand in hand. And the second thing is, it is up to us to decide what kind of problems we want to solve with AI, right? As Dhananjay just said, if you start making these black box solutions saying that yes, you're in or no, you're not, then we have a problem, right? So I think it is critical that we understand what kind of problem we are solving, right? And the fact that the humans and the machine actually work together. Now I'll just give you a very, very small example. Studies after studies have shown that certain jobs go and other jobs replace them, right? And that's been happening. If you look at, again, I'll go back to manufacturing and I'll go back to the automotive car plant, where the body in white shop is entirely, humanless, right? I mean, you'd hardly find 4 or 5 people that it had place, and all these bodies coming out painted and stacked up. So, did people lose jobs? I mean, maybe, for a certain period of time, but their jobs were replaced by other jobs that these people were, reskilled in, and that goes on. I think we owe it to ourselves to make our solutions that much more efficient and that much more cost effective, so that we can deliver better value. But I don't think the risk in terms of, oh my God, all these people are going to lose jobs and these people are going to take over is ever going to happen, right? I never say never, but it's a real difficult thing to figure out, right? It'll do a lot of our analysis. I'll give you an example. So, you know, recruitment was one, right? Where it'll scan 100 resumes and all of a sudden, you know, you'll get 5 resumes that are best fit for purpose, right? Then you can spend better quality time with those resumes, right? On the security side, you know, our SOC, our Security Operations Center, we're a small company, but our Security Operations Center gets about 1.9 billion hits that we've got to analyze in a month, right? And no human can actually do it. So no matter how many people I put to that problem, I'm not going to be able to solve it. And algorithms are just so, right? Algorithms have certain rules, and those rules, if it fits that definition, then we see that, okay, it gives me some results. But that's where I would like to use it, right? So solve bigger problems, solve problems that, you know, just throwing humans at that problem doesn't solve.
No, I appreciate that. Final thoughts, and then I may want to have 1 or 2 questions on this.
This question you talked about impact on society, ethics, job loss, and so on. So just on that perspective, a couple of thoughts. In my view, very deep adoption of technology will lead to job loss. Then water will find its balance over a longer period of time than shorter. People will have to get into new skills. If new business models evolve, which are creating new needs for the humans, overall, the revenue stream will keep growing. More opportunities will come for people to take. They will learn new skills. But definitely this is going to lead to a lot of disruption in the services sector, at least, and manufacturing as well, as technology becomes more and more dominant as we go along. That's not job loss. On the ethics and our responsibility towards customers is more from data privacy side, I think, we need to look at. Customer consent is very, very important. All of us are looking into customers' browsers, cookies, data, using it to the extent we can to our advantage. We need to keep an eye on that. Should be regulated, it should be consented by the customer. Like mobile phones are becoming more proactive in asking you whether you want to give location accuracy, information to the app or not, whether you can read the SMS messages, or in China, Ping An, one of the largest companies in China with 500 million customers, they read your phone log, the call log. When they're giving personal loans to customers, they take permission to read your call log, and they read. So about 40% of China population is with them, and they have phone logs of those 40% population. So they have made neural networks to say this person talks to 10 other people, those 10 people talk to other 100 people, and so on. So they know who are friends and enemies in a way. And if you are lending to a person who talks to other 10 people who are defaulters with you already, don't lend. They have very huge technology around it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it should be ethical. You should read data only when required for the purpose, for the intent customer consented to. And like Facebook has been penalized in a number of geographies internationally for misuse of data and using data excessively. But that's the way of life. As long as it's consented, use it for the purpose, I think impact on society is positive. So we're delivering more value to customers. We're making their lives more interesting and more value creating. To that extent, that responsibility lies with us, but data use is extensive.
No, thank you so much. I think we are pretty much out of time. Let me just summarize a few points that I felt that are useful takeaways. I think one of the points that initially we touched upon is the sponsorship at the senior most level in terms of driving this, and the examples that we gave. Second theme I felt came out is being very business value driven, and using that lens, whether it is on the top line or the bottom line, in terms of where you leverage AI and choosing the problems you want to solve. The free and frank conversation was an important one. Being able to have that open conversation from the top down to say this is where we are going and this is why you need to adopt and learn and skill. I think that was very important as well. I think the point about which you mentioned, Andananjay, is about agility and learning fast. In a way, you put something out there and you learned and you moved fast with it. I think that's the way to do it, because you can't just say, okay, I'll pick up a technology which will be available much later. You have to keep learning. And I think the part about AI and humans in a augmented fashion is an important one. While we want to rest with that, we also realize that humans have limitations as well. It's not like humans are perfect. But having said that, that is at least one thing one need to think about, especially in systems which have got sensitivity to it, and understanding that there is a check and balance in place. So thank you very much for an engaging conversation. I hope all of you found it useful. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause? Such a diverse panel and such interesting thoughts. I'm going to ask all of you to actually, can we have them here? On this side? Okay. So because photo opportunities in roundtable settings are fairly difficult to orchestrate, so I'm going to ask all of you to stand together and face our photographer who's on that side. And can we have tokens of our appreciation to all of our speakers? Yes. Here you go. Have you? Yes. Thank you so much.